Welcome to Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Tonight, we're going to speak with some Liberian millennials. Millennials are people that are born from, I think it's 1981 all the way. They are people from 22 years old to 37 years old. And we have some Liberians who are millennials right here in the diaspora. Hopefully there's going to be a series, but we are starting with 3 Liberian millennials, and they are Breezie, Gibson. Breezie, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you for having me.
We also have Nyonnohweah Seekie. Seekie, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Hi, thank you.
Last but not the least, we have Millennial Jeremiah Menyongai III.
Pleasure to be here.
Commonly known as JB. JB, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Say something, I didn't hear you.
Thank you for having me.
Great. All right. So let's start with a brief introduction. I think I know all of you. So let me start with the attorney. Nyonnohweah Seekie. Nyonnohweah Seekie is attorney. Nyonnohweah Seekie is the daughter of 2 Liberians, Reverend Dr. Naomi Seekie and the late Reverend Dr. Blamo Seekie. She was born in Washington, D.C. and relocated to Georgia, where she graduated high school and attended Georgia Southern University. She earned a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and minor in Criminal Justice. Nyonnohweah then completed her graduate studies toward her Masters of Arts in Criminal Justice at Widener University in Chester, PA, and returned to Georgia for law school at Mercer University School of Law. Ms. Seekie is the owner and managing director of the Seekie Law Firm. Her practice focuses on criminal defense, family law, and immigration. And that law firm is located in Macon, Georgia. She is happily married to her husband, Cecil, and she has 5 siblings and a loving, extensive family. She and her husband enjoy serving their community, worshiping at church, and traveling with their dog. Attorney Seekie, welcome again to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you.
And what dog is that?
Our dog, Chloe, she's a Cocker Spaniel mix.
All right. Next is Jeremiah Menyongai III. He's the youngest of the millennials tonight. He just got into, just a week ago or so, became a millennial. Right. So he's a young professional. He just received his bachelor degree from the University of Massachusetts in law. That bachelor degree is in public health. And Jeremiah hoped to become involved in health policy and program management. He's the son of Reverend Jeremiah Menyongai. That's the general overseer of Christ Jubilee International Church in Lowell, Massachusetts. Jeremiah hoped to be working on his master's in still continuing the line of public health. He has 1 sister, Femaya Menyongai, who recently received her master's in social work. Once again, Jeremiah, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you so much for having me.
And he's also known as JB. Last but not the least is Breezie Gibson. Breezie, welcome again to Focus on Liberia. Breezie is received a BA in psychology and a master's in counseling psychology. Currently, she's a 5th-year counseling psychology doctoral student. She's doing a doctorate. Her research interests involve accurative stress, racial and ethnic identities among the 1.5 and 2nd generation Liberians in the US. Her research focuses on understanding generational differences and helping families navigate them. She has a passion for counseling, teaching, and cultivating student identities. That's a big, welcome, Breezie.
Thank you.
Right. Such a big thing for a millennium. So first of all, I want to welcome you. This is a brand new topic that we have started on Focus on Liberia. I also want to welcome all our viewers across the globe. This is Focus on Liberia. On behalf of my guest relations manager, Stephanie Setro, who is always in the background doing all the hard work, and also my co-host, Danielle Knuckles-guishard. She couldn't be here tonight. She too, she is a millennial, so she really wanted to be here. But Daddy is in town and they are spending some quality time together and also attending some functions. So we really miss her, but we hope to continue this and have more and more millennials coming. So first of all, for those who may not know millennial, let's get the definition. A millennial is a person reaching young adulthood in the early 21st century. That is someone born between 1981 to 1996. So that person as of today can be 22 to 37 years old. One reason we take interest in this population is, let's look at some of the characteristics that have been observed of millennials. They say, I don't know if that's going to be true for any one of you. They are nurtured and pampered by parents who didn't want to make the same mistake, make the mistakes of the previous generation. Millennials are confident, ambitious, and achievement-oriented. They also have high expectations of their employers, tend to seek new challenges at work, and are not afraid to question authority. Many of the Liberian millennials in the USA were born either here in the US or in Liberia. That brings us to number 4 of our millennium. That's Kesselly Zumo. Kesselly, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. Say that again. I want to hear you a little louder.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, we're working for Kesselly and he's now here. So Kesselly, we're just starting with the introduction. So I want to give you a few minutes to just briefly introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
Okay. Okay. My name is Kesselly Zumo. I was born in San Francisco, California. I was raised in Baltimore, Maryland. I graduated from Catholic University with economics degree, bachelor's. I went to go to get my master's in applied economics at University of Maryland, and I will be finishing up law school in the next year and a half in DC. I'm currently located in DC.
Mr. Zumo, welcome to Focus on Liberia. By the way, Mr. Kesselly Zumo is the son of Dr. Amos Zumo.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're glad to have you. So we're just defining millennials and then what are some of their characteristics. And we take interest in this population because most of them came here either when they were under 12 years old or they were born here. So I think we have 2 born in the US and 2 born in Liberia. For Jeremiah, you were born in Liberia. When did you come?
So I was born in Ghana and we came here when I was 3 months old. So I was a baby.
You came here around 3 months old.
Yeah.
All right. And Seekie and Zumo, Nyonnohweah and Kesselly, they were born here. One in California and the other one in, you said DC?
Yes, in Washington, D.C.
In Washington, D.C. What's about you, Breezie?
I was born in Liberia and came to the States when I was 12.
Right. So, and that's the population we're dealing with. We want to kind of examine their experiences, what it's like growing up in both worlds. First, I started to name the characteristics of the millennials as people that have been nurtured and pampered because the parents don't want to make mistakes. They are very confident, ambitious. They're not afraid to challenge authority. They also have a high expectations of their employer. So tonight we just want to have a discussion, okay? So let's start with that. What are any of those characteristics true of any one of you? I'll start with you, Kesselly.
I would say yes, very confident, very very ambitious, very stern on the task set at hand. So I would agree with you with that.
What do you say, Breezie?
I would agree to some extent that we definitely are individuals who don't hesitate to question authority because for a long time we've been socialized to not question authority, but everything that authority says isn't always correct. So I like that aspect that it's okay to challenge people. And if you stand your ground, you stand your ground. I think that we are also more driven and self-motivated. So I like those definitions. A lot of times you hear negative things about millennials, so I can appreciate those definitions.
Well, I'm the authority. I hope you're not going to challenge me. What do you say, Jeremiah?
So I definitely do agree with that definition. I feel like compared to previous generations, millennials do have more of a sense of empowerment and emboldenment. So I feel like with that, it definitely does help us when it comes to ambition, like Mr. Kesselly said. So I do agree with the majority of that definition for the millennials.
You know, any bad thing about millennial you want to talk about?
What was the first part of that definition you said?
They said they've been nurtured and pampered by parents who didn't want to make the mistakes of the previous generation.
Yeah, I think that part stuck out to me because a lot of times I hear that millennials are, overly nurtured to the point that we're spoiled or that we expect things to come easily. But I don't think that's the case. I think that it's more so like what was mentioned before about millennials, having that need or desire to question authority or to not even just authority, but just to have questions and want to understand for themselves and have that confidence. So I think that can sometimes be looked at negatively.
Good. All right, great. So there are so many Liberian millennials in the US. We talk a little about 2 being born here and 2 born in Liberia and came here, one at the age of 12 and the other 3 months old. This is a general discussion. We don't have anything. We just want you to share your experiences. So let's start with saying why you think, talking with Liberian millennials is important. What you think even our viewers and everyone else and those watching you are going to get out of it. Jeremiah, if you can start that.
Sure. So I feel like it's very important to talk about Liberian millennials, just because I feel like with past generations, they face different experiences that millennials have not faced. And I feel like in order to, gain a common ground, we do need to share those experiences with one another.
Right. And anyone feel free to jump in. Let me go to you, Attorney Seekie. The whole idea of talking about millennials, what impact is it going to have? What people are going to get out of it? And why is there a need?
I definitely think that there's a need for it. Like you mentioned, with some of us being born here versus some of us being born in Liberia, just in my family alone, amongst my siblings, half of them were born in Liberia and half of us were born here. So a lot of times being able to just, things that they would explain or things that they experience, I feel like it's not talked about enough. And just our experiences being born here is very different as far as how we go through schooling and different things that we've gone through. So I think it's important so that people can understand how to not just address millennials, but understand where we're coming from as well when we have any kind of discussion.
And what impact can millennials have now on those any kind of discussion, Kesselly?
The impact can be very, very great in terms of sharing your experiences. However, I do want to have the point of networking within your own age bracket or the Liberian millennials, because I do feel like it's very important because of we share the struggle per se of, coming to America or being raised here with being called first generation Liberians. So we should really hone in on what that really means to us as a country, as a culture, and move forward with our grandparents or what our parents instilled to us as values.
Breezie?
So in terms of the impact that, millennials can have on just the Liberian community alone, I think that honestly, it goes a long way. We can always learn from each other, and in understanding our differences, we can find commonalities. A lot of times there are, things that our parents and older generations may not understand about us, and other things that we may not understand, whether it's regarding culture differences or language or dress, or just even that going back to that need to challenge authority may not necessarily come out of disrespect, but more out of, I need to understand why I am being told to do X, Y, and Z. If I can understand it, then I can go forth and be the greatest at executing what you've asked me to do. But you can't just ask me to do something and expect me to just do it because an authority says so. So I think in just navigating some of those differences and understanding each other brings a lot more to the table where we can really work in unity.
And that takes me to your research interest as a doctoral student. You say you are a 5th year doctoral student. How long you got to go with this doctorate? But let's talk about your research interest, because it's kind of coincide with what we are talking about today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my research really, for those of us who like research, we come from a selfish background in that we want to do this work because we want to understand ourselves more. So my research interest was obviously, it came from my own experience and wanting to understand how, I am a 1.5 generation, meaning that I came to the US at 12 years old, and I lived 2 years in Ghana. And so for basically 8 or 9 years of my life was spent in Liberia, and then in Ghana, and then here. So majority of my life has been spent in the US. And then I have a younger sister who was born here. And so really trying to understand some of the differences that I see between myself and my sister, and myself, my sister, and my parents, and then goes down to my grandparents. And it's what I want to know, like, how do these various generations having lived in different spaces, having been used to different things, how do they come together and really understand each other? And then how have I navigated being a Liberian American in the US? And then also, how has my sister navigated her experiences? There are some people that may just call themselves American, and there are others who may say, oh, I'm Liberian American, or just I'm Liberian. So how do you figure out which one of those identities is truly yours, and how have you cultivated those identities?
Let's take the next 2 minutes to discuss her research interest and what you think you can contribute, or what you understand about what she's researching, and how can you answer some of the questions that she has. Nyonnohweah.
So I think I love that research topic, but I definitely think that that's something that's crossed my mind, especially when I first, was in school, especially in undergrad, and we had a lot of organizations, and people would say, basically, what are you? Are you Black? Are you African? And I just always thought, well, I'm African American because my family's from Africa, from Liberia, but I was born here in America. But even being born here, I feel like I was still raised with a lot of Liberian traditional values and learning things about our culture and about, our food and ways of life and everything like that. So I certainly identified with both. Even though some people may not think that when they think African American, they equate that to mean Black, not necessarily Africans, but that's something that I always thought. Or I would just say I'm Liberian or Liberian American. So I think it's hard to just pick one label, especially when you feel such strong ties to that home country.
That's very important, and I'll be curious to know how you call yourself. Are you African American? Are you Liberian American? Are you
Well,
American?
like I said, I kind of I've always said African American because for those reasons that I gave.
Kesselly, how do you call yourself?
So I do call myself a Liberian, although I was born in America. I do think it's a term where you call yourself African American when other people don't know exactly what you are. Apparently, especially authorities in terms of the police or the government. So if you want to call yourself Liberian, you absolutely are. If you want to call yourself Liberian American or African American, absolutely you are that as well. If you want to call yourself Black, you are that as well. But I just don't want, especially in today's millennials or Liberians, for us to lose the identity crisis of what we grew up with, being called Africans, African booty scratchers, and trying to downplay what we came from. And now, in the 2000s, 2020, in fact, the African culture is being embraced even more than ever. And for us to say that we've been doing this in terms of us having this culture, and now the Americans, I guess, like right now, in terms of embracing it, is very receptive to that matter. But for us, it's also been some type of identity crisis to us, but you have to be strong and firm. But to answer your question, I call myself a Liberian American, Liberian, African American. To me, all those things the same because I know who I am and where I came from. And I do believe that your research is very, very good because it will it will shed light to a lot of discrepancies and a lot of gray area that a lot of people have in terms of growing up after the 2000s, before the 2000s, in terms of being a Liberian in America.
All right, Jeremiah.
So I do consider myself Liberian American or Liberian. And I feel like that term has really grown on me too, just because, as Kesselly mentioned, in recent American times, you've seen a lot of these movements where it's like people are beginning to embrace their culture more. Like you have this whole Wakanda Forever thing going on where people are embracing their African roots. And specifically for Liberian, it's really good to see because sometimes, growing up in America, you tend to lose that aspect of your identity. But at the end of the day, I do feel like everybody is searching for something to identify with. So seeing that in the culture, seeing this play out with, Wakanda Forever and other movements that are really focusing on like getting back to Africa, I feel like it's really helping a lot of young Africans and millennials kind of get back to their roots and embrace that.
So let's talk broadly about that identity crisis and your experience, because growing up, I see you living two worlds. You come home, you meet your parents that are Liberians, you go to school or other places, you're American. How, just share with us your experience coming to America or being born here, raised in a Liberian home, and then in a society that's purely American. Breezie, you came here when you were 12. So you tell me that experience. And then you came from Ghana, it's not directly from Liberia, there was war. So share some experience that you may have.
Yeah, definitely. So when I immigrated to the US, as a 12-year-old, my mind is still trying to wrap a lot of things around. Everything was brand new to me. My whole world had changed. And so basically, all I wanted to do was just fit in. I didn't want to be anything more than just another Black girl in school. But as I went through my education and really learned to appreciate not only my ethnic identity, that being Liberian, but just also that embracing being an American, because a lot of times when I speak, people may not understand, they may not even know that I am Liberian, and I identify as Liberian American whenever I get a chance to, because I'm proud of that that identity that has been cultivated, and I'm proud to know where I'm from, because I realized, as I matriculated through school, in understanding that there's a group of people here where, Black Americans who really, that identity has been stripped from them and nobody likes that. So they have been searching to really find and understand, who am I living in this world, living in America? And so for me, I realized that, coming from Liberia, even though I, being an adolescent and teenager, I really just wanted to fit in. But the older I got, the more I realized that I have something that a lot of people do not have, and I need to embrace that. And so that really came with a lot of work, understanding my own culture, understanding my ethnic groups. My grandmother is Bassa. One of my other grandmother is Gribble. And so just understanding that and asking them to, share their stories with me, and really me searching in my memory, of back home, because I understood that that is very valuable and that's what sets me apart from the rest. So I learned to, well, not learn, but I spoke more Liberian English, not only around my family, but sometimes around my friends. And, just really understanding that this identity that I have, that I've been granted, is something that a lot of people do not have, and it was stripped from them, not willfully. So I need to embrace that and be okay with it and do something about it, because I need to understand, how do both of my identities, being Liberian and American, how do those merge, and how do I want to make it merge?
And I think there was resistance, or there was challenge, there was a battle doing that.
Yeah,
What was it
absolutely. Absolutely, it was a challenge. I would say probably from 12 until maybe 18, 19, till I got to college. It was often a challenge. And I think a lot of that challenge was born from a lot of misunderstanding, misnomers about Liberia, or Africa really in general. And so in my mind, I didn't want to deal with the ignorance that came with lack of knowledge of what Africa is or was. Therefore, I didn't want to necessarily inform people that I am from Africa, or that I am Liberian for that matter, because I didn't want to be asked a lot of questions. I'm still working on this, but I had a very low tolerance for ignorance. And so particularly when it came to issues around Africa and Liberia. So my defense mechanism was to just shut it down. And when you ask me, if anyone was to say, where are you from? I would, inform them from Columbus, Ohio. That's where I grew up. Got my high school diploma from, until really get into college, where I began to understand and, really be around friends and other people who questioned their identity, really wanted to understand who they were. As you all can imagine, college is a developmental time for everyone. So we're all searching to find who we are. And I realized, I know a part of who I am in terms of my ethnic and my ethnic identity. And that's the part that needs to really be cultivated. So I went on this journey from resisting to really embracing, to the point of where, this is what I do now, doing research on African immigrants and 1.5 and second generation, and just trying to understand more of how we have gone from resistance to now embracing. Is it because of our own selves, or is it because of this this new movement of people embracing, like Jeremiah said, Wakanda forever? What is that about? Because those are just trends, and trends come and go, as we all know. But really, once you understand who you are you likely to stick with that and cultivate it, or are you going along with the trends?
Let me go to you, Kesselly. You are nodding. I wanted to go to Nyonnohweah, but you are nodding a lot. So Kesselly, what's your experience?
My experience with growing up being a Liberian, with identity crisis.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I didn't have really of identity crisis, because it was both of me living a life at home, which is like Liberian all the way. And then when I went to school, I had to be Black in the school for like Black and white people and everything else. But that was like in like high school, middle school. When I went to college, like I made sure that, especially going to the PWI, I made sure that I stuck to what I knew in terms of me being a Liberian, because a lot of people can get lost and not find themselves in terms of adopting another culture that's not theirs and not one that they grew up with. So I made sure that I was very adamant on what I was, what I came from. However, I did change like some of my habits for the better, because as time go on, you learn, you grow. However, I tried to have that mindset where I know where I came from, I know where I'm going, and I make sure that I have the tenacity to really tell people, and regardless if they're ignorant or not, tell people where I'm at, where I'm from, and make sure you know how I was raised. Cool.
Looks like we lost Dennis there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. See. Well, it's still live, so maybe someone else want to take on more, give more information.
So relating to Kesselly, yeah, I feel like when it comes to, navigating between being Liberian and being Black, school was really a big one for me. Growing up, it's kind of like in the education system, you're Black, that's it. But, going around your family, going to church and community events, you're Liberian. And for so long, I found a hard time trying to navigate between those two, because I felt like in school, they just couldn't understand the fact that somebody Black could be not just Black, but, have an identity besides being Black, Liberian. But, growing up and going to high school, going into college, I started to see what really inspired me was seeing more like other African students, like, Nigerians and Ghanaians, who really embraced their culture and said, hey, I'm Ghanaian, regardless of if I'm in school or not. And I feel like for me, that was one thing that really inspired me. Like, yeah, I need to take pride in the fact that I'm Liberian. And I can mix both. Like, I can be Liberian in school and Liberian at home, because that's who I am. That's a central part of my identity. So if you ask me who I am, I'll tell you Liberian. And like, Breezie said, they'll always ask, okay, what does that mean? One person told me, like, do you work in a library or something like that? Which is what I get a whole lot of times. But it happens a lot. Trust me, it happens a lot. Yeah, but I feel like, being Liberian and really being confident in your identity, especially in this current age, it really helps navigate who you are. And I like being able to combine both of those things.
I agree with what was said. I thought I heard Dennis come back, but I agree with what was said. I think that like everyone said here, college is a time when people can really delve into who they are and better identify not just themselves, but with other people, other cultures. And similarly to what Jeremiah said, I experienced being in schools, or my experience being in school was very different from my experience when I went to a church that was, I would say predominantly, but I think 100% Liberian. And then I'd go to, community events and other things like that, and with Liberian. And so it was always separate until about college, when I had a similar experience and got to know other, not just Liberians, but also, Nigerians, Cameroonians, Ghanaians. And, it was, and like I said, some that I do say kind of across the board, if people ask if I'm like Liberian or African American, and it was good to be able to say, I'm African American, specifically, I'm Liberian. I'm, Liberian American, or identify as this, and they all understood, and we were able to communicate and express that even though our cultures were similar, we appreciated the differences that each of us brought to the table, but we shared a similar experience in that kind of regard.
Yeah, definitely. I just texted Dennis, but I'm curious to know how, so that's one of the ways that everyone have navigated maybe this line between being Liberian and being American. But what ways have you really, let me change this. Was there ever a time where you have only identify as one, like I'm African or I'm Liberian or I'm American, and for what reasons would you have chosen to identify as such?
I think I'll start. I would say first off that I would say that I was African, and then if they ask me where, then I would tell them exactly. But for me to lead off with being Liberian, will ask the ignorant questions of, oh, where is that, or is that in Africa? What part of Africa? And like, not gonna lie to you, I really didn't feel like answering those type of questions if you didn't know where it was, especially if I didn't have time, like if it was in passing. But I'll lead off with, I'm African, then go into like what it is.
Okay.
I feel like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry. Well, I was just gonna say, like, I feel like when it comes to identifying as Liberian, I see that more often when it comes to being at events or being around other Africans that aren't just Liberians, because they actually understand there's more to Africa than just the continent. There's like different cultures, there's different countries. So I feel like in that setting, it's just more easier to say, hey, I'm from Liberia. It's, and you kind of feel that sense of camaraderie even with other Africans because you can display that pride in your country and your nation. So that's.
Oh, hello? I'm sorry. Hello?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, all right. But yeah, I think I was done.
Okay.
I'll say that I've had, I guess one instance I can think of, and similar to what was said, I've been in situations with other Liberians, and one instance I can recall, or other, not just Liberians, but other Africans and African Americans, and in one instance they said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm Liberian," and someone asked about, if I was like, "Oh, were you born there?" And I said, "No, I was born, here," and they essentially questioned whether I was Liberian. And so I think that can sometimes be a little, back taking because everything, like I said, growing up in my household is Liberian. My parents kind of like what you mentioned. My dad was Kru, my mom's Bassa, and so just knowing, all about our history and our cultures and subcultures. So for someone to then question your identity, I think can be worrisome or troublesome. So that was one instance that definitely stuck out as far as identity.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point that you brought up. And that has happened to me on several occasions where I've indicated I'm Liberian American, and it's been said to me that, oh, well, how come you don't do this, or how come you don't look like this?
Yeah.
The look part, that's the big one. And then it comes down to the tongue. So how come you don't sound African?
Mm-hmm.
And so me having to really, check somebody and say, okay, let me let you know. But I think that's a really big piece, because a lot of times when we talk, they don't hear it like they might hear, our parents' very thick accent that really distinguishes them from being just American, right? But I also wanted to circle back to this idea of being Liberian, being American, and just being Black. Because at the end of the day, I'm curious to know if you all not only immerse yourself in, if you immerse yourself in both culture, that being Liberian culture, embracing it, but also Black American culture, understanding it, embracing it, and fighting for this liberation. So are you all, yeah, can you just talk about that?
Yes, I could say I'm definitely for both cultures in terms of the Black culture and African culture. One culture, the Black culture is definitely terms of liberation is a thing that, you know, Black people have to find and just rally. However the solution is, we have to do that. However, we do have a clash between the African and then the African culture itself do have problems. So it can be a lot to go with both cultures, Black in America and actually being an African in America. But yes, I do identify with both cultures. I do fight for the rights and freedom of both cultures.
I would say for me, when it comes to like Black American culture and Liberian culture, I do identify more with Liberian culture, just because I feel like where I grew up in Massachusetts, specifically in Lowell, you don't really see as many Black Americans as you see Africans. So I was never really in touch with Black American culture in depth. I mean, yeah, we have the music, we have the fashion and all that stuff, but when it comes to other things, I wasn't really in depth in Black American culture. But I feel like as a whole in Black American issues, then I am a part of that, because I feel like outside looking in, they can't tell I'm Liberian. To them, I'm just a Black American. So I feel like we all gotta, you know, at least associate with that side when it comes to bigger demographics.
Yeah, I certainly agree, especially with that last point, that typically from the outside looking in, people can't tell the difference and um, can't specify your ethnicity. So it is important to take the time and to make the effort. I feel like I had kind of the opposite experience, that I grew up in a scenario where there weren't a whole lot of Africans around as I was growing up. So I did kind of learn a lot about Black history and Black culture, and I felt very, very connected and very, related, and embraced a lot of that. Not to say that that's, takes away or from my identity with African culture, specifically Liberian culture, but I felt that the two, in a lot of areas, married, and allowed me, especially in my role today as an attorney, to continue to advocate for both, whether it's Blacks or Africans, to kind of push those ideals and push those injustices that are seen across the board and bring notice and attention to it. So for me personally, besides just my work that I do, I think it's important to dedicate time to the community, whether it's through organizations or volunteering, so that you can advocate for, both sectors. When, in fact, Dennis mentioned that I met him doing some work with LAMA, which is a Liberian association we have here in Georgia.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing Liberian Millennials, and my guests are all Liberian Millennials. We have Breezie Gibson. She's a doctoral student. That's Breezie Gibson, a doctoral student. We have attorney, Nyonnohweah Seekie. She has a law firm in Macon, Georgia. We have Jeremiah Menyongai III, the youngest millennial on the show tonight. He just completed his bachelor and is in public health and is going to do his master's. And then we have Mr. Kesselly Zumo, who's also doing his master's, and also two masters at the same time, Kesselly?
No, I already completed my master's in applied economics.
Applied economics. And you're going for, and you're doing law?
Yes.
Okay, just let me know about applied economics. Well, what is that? I'm just curious.
Well, it's a lot of data collection in terms of you knowing what you want to learn about, like correlation, causation of pretty much anything you want to know, bias, just a lot of numbers, a lot of data analysis, a lot of explanation through numbers that a normal person really couldn't understand. However, it's a lot about translating these numbers into regular people, layman terms. So if I can tell you 9% on any given day of the rain showers are going to be on the left hemisphere, it doesn't really say anything. Or if you can say it's going to rain more on the left than on the right on average, then that makes better sense to most people. But it's really a thing of you doing the math and you doing the data, and then you translating it into where people can just understand that. So that's like the language. The language is really harder than the actual data analysis and the math, believe it or not.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll soon open our phone lines to get our comments and see what question they will have for you. But there are comments coming up. And thank you, Breezie, for stepping up while I had some technical issues here. I mean, that's why I love Liberian Millennials. So, did any of you try to do anything, anytime, to fit in, or because maybe you get embarrassed or you have to hide something? Any experience doing that? Because it's tough being in both worlds. Anyone start?
I think I'll start. I'll start with, well, I know our food is very, very good, but to other people, it may not look like the best thing in the world, especially when you're taking it to your work, your school for lunch or dinner. If you're somewhere, in the workplace or anywhere, it doesn't look appealing. However, we know it's great. We know we love it with rice, pepper soup, all that. But for you to maybe the smell of the food is great to us, but it's maybe foreign to a lot of people. So not actually fit in, but try to accommodate everybody in terms of maybe eating somewhere where not a lot of people is at, or just being away from people because they might not understand what you're doing or what you're going through. So I think that's one instance. It's definitely the food and the presentation of our eating habits.
Anyone else want to jump in before I bring on my comments from Facebook?
I think I would agree with the food. It's really fascinating because, yes, the food is great. And at least for me growing up, I never really took lunches to school. But as I became an adult, a young adult, and even now, I honestly don't even care because I don't cook very often. And so when I have Liberian food and I'm taking it for lunch, I'm like, listen, I don't care if you don't like the smell of it. That's on you. You leave the space because I'm not telling you to not microwave your food in this space. I may not like the smell of your food. So, but I think too, one of the great thing is being in this, I don't want to say new era, but this time where we're talking more about diversities and other issues and multiculturalism. And so that is kind of a conversation starter. Like, oh, what are you eating? And then you can just start to talk about it. And a lot of my friends and my colleagues, and they're often asking, about our food and want to have more of it. And I don't want to share any more of it. So, but yeah, I would agree that the smell of it is very unique to us. And it's not the same for others. But I also look at it in the sense of, if I'm accommodating to others, with their food and their smell, they can do the same for me.
So what do you guys eat? Especially if you were, you grew up with your parents cooking Liberian food. Now some of you are young adults. Say, Nyonnohweah is married now. So do you still take that same tteokbokki and that's why you prepare?
Um, not necessarily tteokbokki, but I do, I do kind of merge both worlds or both foods. So I'll still will make, I'll make jollof rice, for example, and share it with my husband and his family, and they're American, and do some fried plantains or whatever, and they eat it and like it. I think, kind of like what Breezie said, people today are more open and they'll try foods and ask questions. And even some of, at my previous job, some of my old coworkers would say, oh, we want to try these foods, or could you bring this in? So I think that people are a lot more open. And, whereas when I was younger, I know we're still young now, but when I was younger, people would ask questions, kind of to ostracize you, like, oh, what's that? Or, and so they were asking these questions, but it wasn't because of a curiosity or an interest. It was to, kind of isolate you. And now I feel like people ask these questions because they genuinely want to know more, want to learn more about our culture.
JB, you're not, Jeremiah, you're not out yet, right? I believe. How's your food? Okay, if you want to have anything on the food, you can talk, but I want to talk about relationships. You want to get a girlfriend, you want to get a boyfriend, you want to marry, love relationship wise. Where do you look? What's available and what's your experience?
I feel like when it comes to relationships, I'm not too selective. I mean, at first I was kind of like, okay, whoever it is, I'll go with it. But more recently, I feel like I really want a Liberian girl, just because we share that same experience, we share the same culture. And of course, there's the food, like I cannot give that up. So I feel like finding somebody of similar background, even if it's just West Africa in general, is fine with me, but I'd preferably go for somebody Liberian.
Let the guys go first. So, Kesselly?
Yes, I am looking for a Liberian girl. Well, first of all, I am looking for an African girl first, but then Liberian girl, and then third is probably Black girl, Southern Black girl, or from, maybe Maryland or DC, but, definitely on the southern parts of America, because they do, if they're just like us, then they're born with that mentality of the Southern hospitality. So I do want to bring that in terms of cooking African food.
Right. It's mainly about the food, right?
No, not always. Not always. Just how they act, their character, the representation of them, and like how they carry themselves and how they carry you with them. So I am looking for those.
But I'm curious to know, and anyone can jump in. Do you find them in your cycle where you go, like where you go to school, church, or areas of worship? Do you find them, or you are coming out of it to find the Liberian girl?
Where I'm at now, not so much. I do see a lot of like general African girls, but not Liberians. Where I'm at right now, not in the plentiful, just maybe here and there, but not in like a big spurts of Liberian women around my age. Not like that.
Breezy? And not just even besides your own personal, looking for relationship, what is out there among Liberian millennials when it comes to finding love?
Honestly, I'm not sure. In terms of, I would speak to my own experience with partnerships. I am more interested in someone. They have to be a well, not have to be. I would prefer Black, so Black or Black and African, but that is really just all of my preference, because I feel like, a Black person, I can relate to them being on a Black American level. Really, there are a lot of culture similarities and such, and so if they're going to be Black American, I need them to also not be ignorant to my ethnic culture, and that is Liberian. So in terms of finding a partner, I am really open. I think one of my biggest requirement is just a Black and or Black African, and then someone who is open to, a lot of the things that I am open to. For example, I am a traveler. I've been privileged and blessed to have had a lot of travel experiences. And so I'm definitely not okay with being partnered with someone who is kind of a homebody. So.
You made that decision already. Let's see what were some of the factors that drove it?
Some of the factors that drove my decision making.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Well, was that what you were looking for?
Well, I'll say I feel like I was, very open to dating. I mean, primarily Black and African males, but I felt as though at the time when I met, my then boyfriend, now husband, I was more so concerned with the personality and the qualities, more so than whether he was ethnically from a certain, place or from a certain area. I do understand those, connections, but I think that so long as he was open to understanding where I came from and open to learning about it, and he took a genuine interest in my culture, that was very important to me. And I do have some family members who did say, like, oh, you should marry Liberian males, and kind of like the question that you asked, whether that's something that I see a lot. It's definitely wasn't. And it was something that I would have had to have gone out of my, area to try to find this person. But again, that's not what I was looking for. I was really just looking for someone that we shared that mutual respect, understanding, love, had similar core values. I think that was what was most important at the end of the day.
And when you're saying love, you got to say in such a way, say love. So that's why they say, men are from Mars and, women from Venus, something like that. Now the guys want Liberian girls, and I could see 80% of the reason is the food. The guys want to eat, the girls want
40%.
40%. Jeremiah says he's not going to give that up.
Well, I
teach her how to cook Liberian food.
Right.
That is true.
I work to dismantle patriarchy. So,
exactly.
If we're going to be partnered, there has to be, I will tell you, I do not cook. So we got to eat.
I'm just saying, if he wants you to make check rice and gravy, he should know how to make check rice and gravy.
Exactly. Right on.
Guys, I'm not going to get involved with that. All right. There's a question here from Jimmy Eastman on Facebook. He said, have any of you had a tension between African Americans and Africans vis-a-vis their culture? For example, each group claims the other tend to look down upon them. You have that kind of experience? Breezie, let's start with you.
Yes, I've had those experiences, not personally, but I've had peers and colleagues who have shared those experiences. And in doing research, it is something that is pretty consistent across the board in the literature that, Africans frequently come to the US and kind of put their nose up at Black Americans. And I think that is true to some extent because Africans, I'm not going to speak for the whole diaspora, but I will say that in some instances, there are cases where people really do believe that, oh, well, because you don't know where you come from, or you complain about racism and prejudice, or you are lazy. They buy into all of these stereotypes of white supremacy, and they think that, oh, they're above it. But as a lot of the other panelists have already said, at the end of the day, nobody knows, just phenotypically, nobody understands that you're not Liberian, that you're not American. So if the police are going to pull you over, they're going to pull you over because you're Black. They're going to pull you over because you're doing something that marks a stereotype of a Black man or a Black woman. Therefore, I think that a lot of African individuals, or maybe, yeah, I would say some African individuals really buy into this stereotype that, oh, because I'm African, I'm better than you as a black person in America. And that's where the divide is, to be honest with you, because if Africans and Black Americans came together and put away all of those really white supremacist notions, we can really be more powerful than what we really are. But because those stereotypes are there and we have in some cases bought into it, it makes it harder to really unify. So that's my opinion.
And I agree with what Breezie said. I feel like as a whole, Blacks are already marginalized in America. So I feel like when it comes to Africans and African Americans, some African Americans may take on the viewpoint that, okay, we're already marginalized as a group. So those Africans over there, like they're kind of, I don't want to say beneath us. I'm not saying that all of them think that way, but some may do. It's definitely something on both sides, but I feel like a main cause of that rift is because we don't want to associate with one another. But I feel like in recent times, African Americans are beginning to embrace African culture way more. Like you do see a lot of African Americans wearing the Seekies, that kind of stuff. And I feel like vice versa too, even though, you know, in the past, American culture was kind of like what it needs to be. Black American culture, when you come here as an African, you need to take that up. I feel like even now, you know, it's a mutual respect that's growing. And I feel like, you know, as long as you have that cordial spirit and as we work together, we can, you know, accomplish great things.
Nyonnohweah?
I think that there has been a lot, or maybe less so today, but there has been in the past kind of that separation between Africans and Black Americans. And again, part of that, which I think has been touched on, part of the reason for that kind of separation or looking to further, you know, distinguish those differences between the two groups is because of the oppression that was put on Black Americans here in the US. So I think that part of that, you know, was the need to, or was the feel that there was that need to further separate or further distinguish Africans from Black Americans here. But similarly to what Jeremiah was saying, I think that as you know, time has progressed and as people really get more of an understanding of the different cultures, that's been something that I know that I've experienced less so than even some of my older siblings have experienced that more just growing up.
Another question from Vida Maria Wright. Say, how involved are you in the Liberian social community? In the Liberian community in the diaspora, how involved are you with that? Being there on the organization level, maybe on a place of worship or anything whatsoever? Kesselly, let me start with you. What's your involvement in the Liberian diaspora community?
I try to be as involved as possible, especially through my family first, then anything I hear through that. In terms of my workspace, where I'm at in terms of work and school, I really don't see any Liberians in my area, so I try to reach out through family members, people that may be African in my place, and then maybe go through them to find more Liberians and whatever that you're doing, any discipline that you're doing. So for me personally, I try to be as involved as possible with the budgeted time that I do have.
For me, I would say that I am, unfortunately, I'm not as involved in the Liberian community here where I am living, going to school. There isn't a whole lot of Liberians. I've been able to find a sprinkle here and there that I've been able to keep in touch with, but in my my hometown, Columbus, my adopted hometown, Columbus, I try my best to be involved in the community. So maybe that may be going to events that I am invited to. And so just kind of doing a little bit here and there has really helped me in making sure I'm maintaining that core of my identity.
Let's look at back home. How close are you following events back home? In fact, let me play the music and tell me who sang this music. Oh, they let it come out.
I don't think I know the artist's name, but I definitely did hear that music.
Well, you've read it. So how involved are you with, do you follow events back home on any level? Could be sports, could be politics, could be music, anything whatsoever. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Kesselly, or which of you are talking?
Well, for me, I follow sports and music. I try to follow the soccer team, national soccer team, as much as possible, and the music.
You got to give me something now. Don't just say I follow. You got to tell me what is it that you follow.
What's that guy name? But the song that said "We drinking drinks."
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. I forgot the name, but
okay.
It's a lot of music. There's a lot of music that I go through.
Nyonnohweah, what do you follow when it comes to Liberia, if any?
I follow, well, one of the things that I follow a lot is politics. I follow a lot of like news events. So I like to keep up to date with that, specifically in Liberia. And I also follow that here because it's a big interest of mine. So anytime that there's, just kind of on a weekly or so basis, I'll keep up and check the news events to see what's going on, if there are any big major developments. So that's something that I always keep my eye on.
The same question I asked, I told Kesselly, give me something now that you follow in Liberia, specifically.
Specifically, let's say I don't want to get into anything too political, but one of the stories that I've been following is what's currently going on with the investigation into, the money, the millions, and kind of seeing what's happening with President Nyonnohweah and that administration.
Breezie?
You know what? Honestly, I do not follow a whole lot of much of anything, whether it's Liberia or here. I think the most that I have done, I mean, I love Liberian music. Right now, my Spotify is on Liberian playlist, and you find me jamming to my music in my car. In terms of remembering artists and stuff, I don't remember a whole lot. I don't remember many artists, but that's just because that's not really much of my interest in remembering names. I don't remember much American artists either. So,
but you remember the music?
I do remember the music. And
like what? Which one you know from Liberia?
Like like Kesselly said, the drinking drinks, and then the other one, number 9. That's one of my favorite ones too. And mind your, I think it's mind your business, or if that's your business.
Yeah, mind your business.
So I am in tune to some of the music, but I don't remember the artists' names. In terms of politics, I'm not big on political issues and events. So I don't really follow much of that unless, my grandparents or my mom or someone tells me about what's going on, then I go to look it up and read up more on it for that specific event. But I do really appreciate Liberian history, particularly, it's an interest of mine because it's in my dissertation. So, I love reading up on Liberian history from like before the slaves got to Liberia, and even during that whole time.
Ex-slaves. Before the ex-slaves got there.
Yes, before the ex-slaves got there. And so just Liberian history is more of my interest at this time. And so I try to follow that and gain a better understanding of it. And truly in reading more about it and leading up to the war, you know, I've gained a much better understanding for my own self, not from my parents, not from my grandparents, but for my own self, as far as, you know, yeah, this is how a group of people can become angry and want to retaliate and regain their freedom and such. And so I try to figure out how to really relate that knowledge to my Black American history knowledge.
Jeremiah, and I hope all of you do watch Focus on Liberia, because we try to educate, elevate, and promote Liberia. But Jeremiah, your experience, do you follow anything Liberia?
So I do try to keep up with a lot of things Liberia. I know one thing for me is music. I do have some friends who recently came from Liberia, so they've really been putting me onto like a lot of good artists recently, which I do like to listen to Liberian music now. And I feel like when it comes to politics, I am trying to get more in touch and hearing about what's going on, because it does affect, you know, family members back there. I believe the last thing I heard upon was something about a journalist, Acosta, with the whole, you know, arriving in Liberia.
Okay, we kind of losing Jeremiah right there.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a question here from Bishop Lawrence Jackson is asking, what's your view on dual citizenship? Some of you are born here. Do you still want to maintain your Liberian citizenship? What's your view? Let's start with the lawyer.
So I think that dual citizenship is, from everything that I've been hearing about it, it's, you know, of course, a more complex issue than it seems on its face. Like growing up, I thought dual citizenship, especially because earlier on Liberia had dual citizenship, so I thought that sounds amazing. You know, I would be able to go back to where, you know, my family is from, and also maintain my citizenship here. It just sounded like the best of both worlds. However, I think that a lot of the discussion that I've been seeing about dual citizenship in Liberia, it seems to be as though there are fears that there are kind of ulterior motives, and that it would bring a lot more complications and a lot more possibly, you know, collision, or if it were to become dual citizen, if they were to go back to that dual citizenship status. So I feel like it's hard to say whether that's for the best for the country.
If you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing with some Liberian Millennials, and the topic is, of course, Liberian Millennials. If you want to join the conversation, please post your comments on Facebook. If you want to call, the number is 706-684-0392. There's a question here from Dave Jai. He says, it goes around. Part of the problem is the media and other mechanisms have created the notion that there is nothing desirable about Africa or Africans. Many African Americans bought into that nonsense. Fortunately, things are getting better. How can young folks like you, very versatile in both cultures, bridge that gap between the Africans and African Americans? Jeremiah, let's start with you.
I feel like the big thing here is education and trying to inform people that there's more to Africa than just jungles and lions. You know, we do have big cities, we do have roads like America does. And in fact, a lot of cities in Africa as a whole resemble cities in America. And I feel like, yes, the media does play a big role in that, but with the emergence of social media, more people are seeing the true Africa. More people are seeing like, okay, Africa is more than just that. So I feel like if we continue to have these conversations with people and also just, you know, make sure they're aware that, you know, Africa is thriving, there are a lot of things going on in Africa that will definitely make the difference.
Breezie?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with JB. If it's okay that I call you JB. I think that's what we're doing right now is talking about this and figuring out how to bridge that gap. And I think just having a conversation is a good start. And to be honest with you, I think it starts with, you know, in our homes, because you do have, by definition, you do have Americans in your home. You know, my sister is technically an American. She was born here. So even though both parents are Liberian, she's American. And even though she may categorize herself as Liberian American, and I may do the same. So I think having these conversations about, you know, Africa, particularly for people who haven't been to Africa, and just educating them on what it's like and what it's really about, that's a really great start. But I try to put myself in spaces where I observe my crowd and study my crowd before I begin to expend my energy and time, for that matter, on educating people on what Africa is, what Liberia is, because honestly, some people just don't want to hear it. And if you don't want to hear it, then I don't want to waste my breath. And whenever you get to a point of really wanting to understand what Africa is and Liberia, then I would be more than happy to share that with you. So I try to surround myself with an eclectic mix of people, and that would be, I have a lot of Black American friends, and they love listening to me tell them things about Liberia. I have a lot of friends who are from the Caribbean, so we talk about the culture similarities. Particularly, I try to stick with my friends of color that may understand some of the differences and may understand some of it and may not understand others. In terms of my white colleagues and friends, I tread very carefully in what I say and how much I say, and that's personally because I don't want any culture appropriation. So I try to tread very carefully. But in terms of my friends of color, I'm very open to that, and I know that I can trust that they will be respectful of my culture.
Anyone want to add to that before I go to my next question? My next question is, have any of you visited Liberia? If no, when? Why? Do you have interest? When you get there, what you hope to look at? What you hope to do?
Well, I guess
you know, the name for Kesselly in Liberia, we say Kezo. So when I say Kezo, I'm talking to you. So Kezo, let's start with you.
So I haven't been there yet because the time that I wanted to go, it was a civil war. And then from there, I was busy with school. So I really couldn't go during the school year or summertime. Couldn't pick a date, couldn't pick an area where I really wanted to go. Had family members. I had also family drama, so I had to deal with that back home and here in the States. So now recently is a perfect time for me to go. However, I am busy right now with what I'm doing now. So hopefully next year, God willing, next year or the year after that, 2020 and 2021, I'll be heading over there.
You send money?
Yeah, from time to time. I try not to, because there's a lot of politics in that as well. There's a lot of politics in that, but I try to send money like through my parents, give my parents money because they know they've been doing it for years. And, you know, I just started doing that. So I try to give them that and they know how to allocate it correctly.
You don't want to be involved with all that allocation.
Nah, I don't want to deal with any of the politics. No, I don't want to deal with it.
Okay. Jeremiah?
So I haven't been to Liberia yet, but I really do want to go. Definitely sometime within the next 2 years, just because, like Kezo, I feel like a lot of education, school, get in the way of that. But since I graduated, I feel like I do have more of an opportunity to go back home to see how things are. And I feel like going back to Liberia will also be a learning opportunity for me, because a lot of the privileges we have here, we do take advantage. So I'd love to use those experiences to kind of grow as a person here and see how I can help Liberia.
And now you work now, right? So you're able to pay your own way.
Yeah, I gotta save up, but it can happen.
Nyonnohweah?
Yeah, I feel like I'm in the same boat with these gentlemen that initially when we wanted to go, of course, it was Civil War, and then afterwards, just wasn't able to, mostly due to school and costs and things like that. I have been talking with my mom though about taking a trip there together because I feel as though it'd be important for me to go with her so that I can see, um, places that are critical to her, places that she grew up, and I feel as though there'd probably be no better tour guide than to show me places of historical importance as well. So that is something that I'm looking forward to.
And before I come to you, Breezie, I also want to add, if any of you have special interest going back, not just visiting, but to live there or to work there for some time, or so include that in your response, Breezie.
Yeah. So no, I have not been back to Liberia since immigrating to the U.S., unfortunately. And in all of my travel experiences, I have not been able to make it back to Liberia, but I do plan to go back within the next 2 years. My hope is that that will be a very pleasant graduation gift to myself from my family. So if my family is watching, start putting your money together. Appreciate that. So in terms of going back to Liberia to stay, I'm not really sure. I definitely am interested, but I don't know for how the length of time. One of my career goal is to work for the United Nations in terms of with helping victims who have experienced war and trauma and such. So I'm in the field of psychology. So that's right down my alley. And that will be an opportunity for me to live in Liberia or somewhere in Africa, and helping my people. I will consider all of Africa my people, but specifically in Liberia. So I've been definitely looking at opportunities to serve my country in that way, whether it's with the United Nations or the World Health Organization, but definitely to be able to go back and give back because I haven't been able to. And I feel like being in America and having the educational opportunities that I've had to be able to earn a doctoral degree, I have to use that for not just my Black American family, but also for my African family.
Did any of you speak any Liberian language? Kru, Bazo, Grebo, Dan, or at least understand bits and pieces or some words like greeting?
Small.
Okay, so let's try. Anybody?
One day.
Okay, what is that?
It's Basa. I believe it's hello, how you doing?
Okay.
Yeah. I don't really. I've been asking my grandparents, who one of on my mother's side is Bassa and on my father's side is Gribble. So I've been asking them to talk to me more in their native tongue. So when I'm visiting home, I ask them, like tell me to go get you some water in Bassa or in Gribble, so that it begins to kind of sink in. But as far as speaking it, I am not there yet, but I'm working on it.
Okay. Nyonnohweah.
My grandmother taught me and my sister some Bassa, but I definitely, understand only little phrases here and there and can only say little things here and there. So
Like what?
Like keywords that you should know, like morning day, things like that.
You can, but in Liberian, we don't call the R, we don't hold on to the R.
Okay.
Morning.
Did I invite all Bassa people? Is that what I'm noticing? Kazo, what's about you?
No.
What?
I think that's how that's pronounced.
Say that again.
Well.
Oh, the Liberian pepper you've been eating, you're talking. All right. Well, I mean, It's been wonderful talking with these very bright millennials. One thing I want to come before we close is not every Liberian millennial is as successful as you guys. I don't know what the secret is, and for those who did not make it, or maybe they didn't listen to their parents, or what might happen, what's your experience out there? What was the break for you, and what advice can you give to other Liberian millennials who are not doing so well? Breezie, want to start?
So I think there are many reasons, obviously as to why an individual may not be doing well. It could be, I don't know about anyone else's background, but it could be based on our social class. Some people come to the States with a little bit more money and more family help and such. People have different understanding of what it means to be in America, what opportunities you should take. Different identities. Sometimes people just come to the States and, as my grandparents will call it, pick up all the bad American habits, but I definitely think that it's important to just kind of keep going and keep trying. Some people are just more intrinsically motivated, and others need additional push. And sometimes your family don't know how to give you that additional push, or other than just telling you must go to college, or you got to do well, or you can't do this, you can't. They're good at telling you what you cannot do, but not really good at telling you what you need to do to be successful. So for me, fortunately, I was surrounded by, a lot of great Black women, Black Liberian women who really model for me what success looks like. And I wanted to follow that. And I have this intrinsic drive to always do better, be the best, and do whatever I need to do to get there. But I definitely understand that there are a number of different reasons why an individual, a Liberian millennial, may not be successful. And and success, it's also subjective. So
don't bring that subjective business. People in jail were talking to you, say such savage.
Okay, not that.
JB.
Yeah, I feel like there are a number of reasons why some Liberian young millennials might not make it to that level of success that we're talking about. But I feel like one of the reasons that I've seen frequently is like, some of them, they come here from Liberia and they see that there's so many opportunities here, there's so much things to do. And with that freedom, they get carried away with it and they begin to do what they want to do, and instead of minding their parents, because America is a land of opportunity. But, I feel like a lot of them need to understand that America is what you make of it. There's great good and there's great bad. So depending on the decisions you make and, the influences that you have in your life, that's going to make or break you. So one big thing is try to associate with people who have the same mindset as you in regards to like making sure you get to that level of success, because birds of a feather do flock together. So you'll find yourself kind of imitating their behaviors and vice versa.
Nyonnohweah?
I feel as though my family valued, valued faith and also put a big emphasis and value on education. So for me, that was something that kind of always stuck, that, my family would say, just put your mind to something and stay with it. And so I felt like that was something that drove me personally to progress in my education. And also, I think that seeing my family, work hard and remain determined helped push me and help me in developing my own determination. And so and not everyone has, that family structure. Not everyone has those, parents to instill those types of values or to give you that encouragement daily, saying, you can do anything you put your mind to. So I can see how it's, very hard for someone who might have come here and now, they're living in a situation with people that are unfamiliar, or again, just not having that supportive family. It can be very difficult for you to succeed and become a successful person. So I've definitely been very blessed in that regard.
Your mother is Reverend Doctor, your father is Reverend Doctor. So We could talk more about that, whether you were pressure, but let's leave it at that.
There was some pressure there too, but
Kazo.
Yeah, it was definitely pressure on me in terms of doing well because of them coming to America, not having a lot. Tell me all the stories about when they were young. They used to carry everything and do everything at one time, at all times, 8 days a week, 400 days out the year. So I'm like, well, if I have this opportunity to be in America with everything else that they didn't have, I have it plus support, then I can't go low. I can't go any lower than what they've done. I have to surpass it. And in terms of what my parents, my family have been doing, there's a high bar that I have to get. But once I get that bar, I have to go off that bar. So it's definitely pressure within family, but one advice I would tell people, especially Liberian millennials, is to keep going, because if you stop, you just get you get lost in all type of foolishness, all type of things that are not meant for you. Is the devil's work. So just keep going and just be very focused, because mind's a terrible thing to waste, and the idle mind is even worse than that.
Wow. I just wish we could just keep going. And then you give a critique of us parents, because our actions also influence what you do. Before the show, Breezie and I were talking about even parents, those of us who were in the war, we come out with our own issues, maybe trauma. And here we're in a place where we have to raise children with even our trauma. So there are a lot of grounds that we can cover, but this is a very beautiful start. You can give me suggestions how we can continue, because I think this is something that we need to talk about with other millennials, especially from different backgrounds. I'm surprised that someone said I recruited all Bassa people. But let's conclude this. Let me just have your final thoughts, and where, if you have suggestions for me as to how we can move forward with this idea of talking to millennials, you can also tell me. But let's conclude. Let me have your final thoughts, and we can close the broadcast tonight, hoping to get you all back again someday. Let me start with Jeremiah. Your final thoughts.
So my final thoughts are, this was a great experience. I feel like it's very good to, be able to vocalize the different things that young millennial Liberians go through, because there's not really much of a platform for us to do so. So this is a very great opportunity. And I feel like, speaking with the other panelists on board here really helped me, because I can identify with each and every one of you guys as well, because we all share some similar experience, because at the end of the day, we are, Liberians in America, we're millennials. So I feel like this was a great experience, not just to vocalize ideas, but to also receive ideas as well, and to learn from each other.
And I hope you guys will network. That's the whole point. Nyonnohweah, your final thoughts.
Well, I would just like to start my final thoughts by, thanking you for having this platform and this forum for us to discuss, our experiences. Even though they may have differed, there are definitely, like Jeremiah said, some similarities between us or amongst us. Also, I would just like to encourage this conversation to continue, to delve deeper into some of these topics, so that we can further explore, some of the things that you've mentioned. I hope that, this continues, and that you continue to speak with a variety of millennials. And for the millennials that you mentioned earlier who are struggling, I would like to also encourage them to, continue to press forward, and to not just don't settle. Whatever your ambitions are, your dreams are, I'd like to encourage you to really pursue those, and continue to be focused on those goals, and do it with pride in where you come from and representing your culture.
Kazo?
Yeah, like they said before, thank you for having us. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the dialogue because it's something that we don't usually talk about every day, every month, every week. This is something that really doesn't get brought up as a forum to discuss around people like us that have similar struggles, similar experience. So I do appreciate this. I want this to excuse me, I'm sorry. I want this to continue in terms of the dialogue of just having people to be aware of everything in terms of this culture, especially if you're dealing with identity crisis yourself and with people around you that are also of Liberian descent. So I do appreciate this focus on Liberia. It really is a focus, and we need to stay focused on this until everything gets better.
Breezie?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what everyone has already said. I really appreciate this dialogue for all of us from different backgrounds to be able to sit and articulate our various experiences. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity, and I really hope that we can continue the dialogue, whether it's in our own household, among our friends and colleagues, but to just really keep it going. That way we learn to understand each other more, and then take it from there and really helping our beloved Liberia. I'm going to shamelessly put a plug out there for my dissertation. I will be collecting data soon, so I will appreciate it if I could get all of your email addresses so that I can send you what I need. Please send it out to other Liberians. Don't be afraid to, send us a large email out there to them. I really would appreciate the support. And to Liberian millennials who are, catching themselves in a difficult place where they're not sure if to go left or right or, up or down. I really want to just encourage you to just figure out what it is, whether that is talking to various people. I'm always open. I do this with students all the time. I'm very open to sitting with people, talking to them, helping them figure things out. I'm not going to figure it out for you, but I am an emergent psychologist and I love what I do. And I am absolutely always open to unofficially counseling people, but just talking to them and really helping them figure some things out. And sometimes it just takes a mentor, and I understand that. So I'm always willing to give back because so much has been given to me.
Thank you so much. There's a suggestion here, a great interview. Everybody is praising you guys. I mean, one of them said, great job, but you have to improve your Liberian language skill. So just
what do you mean? We all speak Liberian, yeah, you both.
So I'm going to give you a test. I'm going to play a song and tell me which language it is.
Oh, geez.
That's a gospel.
That's
I don't know. It made me Basha.
Wait, Kesselly, you wait. You want to call a lifeline?
Is that Grubble?
That's what I was thinking.
Is it Grubble? I hear Niswa in there, and my grandmother always said,
What you said, Seekie? You know where?
I said I was thinking Gribble.
Jeremiah?
I was thinking Kisi.
Kesselly?
Yeah, Gribble. I thought it was Gribble.
Gribble has it.
Oh, yeah.
this is a Gribble song by my sister from the Assembly of God Church called Naomi Kojilo. So I want to thank you guys. I can't thank you so much for coming on. This is the first of its kind for us to have this. It's just an experiment, and I think it worked out well, and we have to continue it. For our people on Facebook, we want to say thank you so much for hanging here with us. For those who are asking questions, please, after the show, go on our YouTube channel, subscribe to the channel, share the video. We need your ideas. We need support to carry this on, not just monetary support, but we can bounce things off you. Young millennials, very brilliant. We need all the help we can get so that we can carry this thing forward. So on behalf of Danielle, my co-host, and also Stephanie, my guest relations manager, we say thank you so much for hanging here with us. And God's willing, we'll do this again.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Breezie, can you give me your playlist you were talking about?
Yes. So how about we get offline? And I think Dennis had put us all in an email, so
Yeah.
we can just communicate via that and send out phone numbers if we can. Okay. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Yeah.